As we gather today, I think wherever we gather as a community, we gather in prayer. And I think today is just to acknowledge all the people who have been suffering lately, those either from natural disaster, those from violence, or those even locally here who have suffered from the fires and up in Northern California. And we must keep them in prayer today. For we as a Christian community gather in faith and gather in trust that the Lord will bring comfort, the Lord will bring healing, the Lord will help to restore their lives. Today in our readings we hear about choice foods, choice wines. We hear about a wedding banquet. We hear about St. Paul, who's lived in abundance, and he's also lived with nothing at all. We see the opulence of things and are invited by Jesus ourselves to enter into the wedding banquet. I had a wedding yesterday. My first wedding in like 5 years. I don't do a lot of weddings being the vocation director, looking for men to be priests, so I don't do a lot of weddings myself. But it was a wonderful wedding yesterday, and I was thinking about the readings that were coming up today and say, wow, any wedding party, you pretty much have it pretty well planned. All planned out, you know the time, the date, you know the reception, you picked everything to go well. And like the bride yesterday, I told her, don't worry about it when the wedding starts, because it's going to happen the way it's going to happen. Deal with it later, but just enjoy and be present in the moment. We hear in our gospel today that those who were invited decided not to come in that parable that Jesus shared. Some found other better things to do. One to his farm, the other to his business. All seemed to not have a desire to enter into the wedding feast. We are all called to partake in the feast of Jesus Christ. All invited to participate in the banquet of Jesus Christ. To be prepared to enter into that wedding feast. That the gospel today truly is rather harsh. Rather harsh gospel when we see a man who is invited off the street to come to the wedding party and he is not dressed appropriately. And he is told not just to leave, but they throw him out bound hand and foot into the street. In the time of Jesus, weddings were a very important part of the culture, as they are today. And there was a specific kind of dress that everyone in the Jewish community knew about. And so if you were invited to something, you would want to put on the appropriate clothes. And this person said, you know, I'm just going to go. Reminds me of how we are all called today to always be prepared ourselves. To be prepared as Christian people to enter into that banquet feast of heaven. And what are we doing today, here and now, in this time, to prepare ourselves for the banquet feast of heaven? Do we spend a lot of time with choice wines and choice foods? Do we spend our life worrying about this things that happen in this world? Do we spend more time with work and things and less time with our family? Do we spend more time involved in sports and everything? Go Dodgers. Anyways, all those different things that we do in life and reflect our time from spending with the Lord? I think it's about balance in our lives, about a balance we must have, and to place God in the midst of all of that. How often we exclude God from certain realities of our life and say, no, God's on Sunday. And how it's important for us to incorporate and to bring God into all the aspects of our life, because it is all blessing. So we hear in our first reading about the mountaintop, about God will save His people. But we must be His people. We must be called to be Christ-like to each other. We We must be called to live that message each and every day as who we are as human beings, to respect and to care for one another. Maybe even to lay down our lives for someone else. We've seen a lot of tragedy recently, and we've seen a lot of goodness come out as well. We've seen the goodness of humanity also shine forth through our first responders, the firefighters, the police officers, the friends, the neighbors who helped to carry victims from Las Vegas to get care and treatment, to police officers running into homes in Northern California to save elderly people who couldn't manage to get out themselves. There is goodness in our world. There is goodness in our lives. But we must remember always to put Christ first and to put God in our lives to bring it all together. It is good that we are here today. It is good we are here today to pray and to be that community of faith.